this was the first time we saw Paige really get guarded. This is where we saw what is going to happen in year 2. This is the scout report that needs to be out there on Paige Bueckers once the Dallas Wings get good, because Dallas Wings are going to get good at some stage in her career. This was the game where I'm like, okay, we can shut up that. We can shut up.
Of one Paige Bueckers. Oh, she's better than Caitlin Clark. I mean, stab me in the eye with a spoon, for Christ's sakes. Wow. So that's a thing right now. Last night, Paige Bueckers dropped 44 points. And we're going to look at a video that just dissects and exposes a lot of that shit. Let me tell you. It exposes a lot of stuff involving Paige Bueckers getting special treatment on the court.
Diva of Dump Divas Kat Engelbert is breathing a sigh of relief. Her pretend friends in the mainstream media, they are trying to crown a new star. If the media has it their way, this could potentially be the new face of pretend basketball. And it's not just the woke media. There are even some in conservative media who are voluntarily biting into the shit sandwich. Headline at Outkick. No, Caitlin, no problem. Paige Bueckers can save the WNBA season.
It's a little bit different, huh? It's a little bit different out here when you get Caitlin Clark treatment. It ain't so easy peasy getting to play one-on-one, getting to just do your thing how you want to do it, when you want to do it. Paige Bueckers got the Caitlin Clark treatment for one game, and it got...
She went off in a game against the Los Angeles Sparks, scoring 44 points, but the craziest part about that was her shooting percentage. She shot over 80% from the field, and I tweeted about that, and I was like, that's actually insane. Give props where they are due. Shooting over 80%, scoring 44 points is actually insane. But with this game, like Paige Bueckers she put on a masterclass in scoring, and I think with that, these are some big numbers, and those are some props that need.
The game, you said it's going to be important to be physical with like Paige Bueckers. Can you talk about the defensive game plan for Dallas and like how your team was able to hold them to their fewest points of the season?
Yeah, it started, with our attention to detail with Paige. I thought, Slim was very physical, stayed in her space, and the actions that we guarded her in, we were very aggressive, showed multiple bodies, and kind of, made her hesitant to use the ball screen a little bit. I thought we rotated well. And everyone who ended up being on Paige from E on down, I thought we were...
Paige Bueckers got Caitlin Clark treatment for the first time in her career, and it looked bad. It looked real bad. Everybody was running around. Yeah, she was cooking 44 points versus the Sparks. They didn't play a lick of defense, letting this girl play one-on-one basketball in every area of the floor, letting her post up in the mid-range area one-on-one. Now, I'm giving credit. She's a bucket in one-on-one, especially from that mid-range, from the free throw line down area. But this is the first time we watch teams actively be persistent about taking away her spots and what she wants.
She got blitzed. She got doubled. And do you want to know what she did as soon as she got blitzed and doubles? She passed. Paige Bueckers, look, she played decent amount early in the game. The game was kind of over and she got subbed out. Paige Bueckers shot 7 times. Paige
Bueckers, let me ask you this. How did it feel to be blitzed and played 94 feet before you even get a chance to bring the ball up court like your name was Caitlin Clark, aka my precious Cece? You didn't like that, huh? You hear me? You out there was looking like you was about to cry. Yeah, so what do your fans have to say now? Excuse me, where are you Paige Bueckers fans at? That's y'all MVP and face of the league, right? She's boring. She's not good enough. She gets special treatment. But understand, she kept getting blitz after blitz after blitz.
Look up how the WNBA played against Caitlin Clark in terms of the defensive strategy, in terms of the other basketball teams around the WNBA, what they did against Caitlin Clark versus how they've handled Paige this year. Everybody wants to act like Paige is so much better than Caitlin. They're certainly not playing defense on Paige the way they played on Caitlin. They're certainly not attacking her with unnecessary fouls the way they attacked Caitlin with unnecessary fouls last year. So in the 2024 season, there were 35 flagrant fouls called. Caitlin Clark received 17% of the entire season's flagrant fouls, 17%. I mean, we've seen all the injuries, we've seen all the fights, the MMA fights that the WNBA players have gotten into this year. There haven't been 35 flagrant fouls called.
17 on the floor. She had 0 assists and 11 points. 0 assists. 0 assists. I don't like. That's mental. That's mental for a player that they were trying to say was better than Caitlin Clark. And I'm not even going to say, oh yeah, you know, the points are everything. Points aren't everything at the end of the day. Assists aren't everything. Like, all of these individual stats aren't everything. It was just the fact that she literally, how many blitzes did how many open shots did the Indiana Fever get off a Caitlin Clark blitz? And albeit it's very different when you have a short roller in Leah.
When you guard a player like Paige, it's not just relying on, you know, your guards, whoever has the main matchup, but it becomes a team picture and understanding, you know, rotations on the ball, off the ball. And I think the other thing that we did, you know, early on, we rebounded decently out of it. We didn't give up too many. I think it was 12 second chance points at the half, but not a lot of you know, deflating possessions after having a lot of deflections and things like that.
This year, not enough, but if her name was Caitlin Clark, I bet she would have had at least 9 to 10 assists. You hear me? Because she's more than just a scorer. You hear me? Unlike Paige Bueckers, she's only a scorer. She's not dynamic. She's boring. You hear me? Clearly, she fits the narrative, but she can't handle being double team or triple team. She was out there looking like...
Did you just say Paige Bueckers will save the WNBA season? This season? The same Paige Bueckers that's dating Elmer Fudd? The same Paige that plays in front of empty civic centers for the Dallas Wankers? You expect me to believe she is going to save the WNBA season? She can't even sell out home games. Matter of fact, she doesn't come anywhere close to selling out games. The Wankers rank near the bottom of the league in attendance.
One night in late August flipped a season storyline. The arena felt heavy. Every touch drew a crowd. Every decision carried weight. The player who had lit up the league with a 44-point masterpiece suddenly looked human. Shots that once fell clean hit the front rim. Passing lanes closed early. Rhythm vanished. The debate that had been simmering for weeks boiled over in a few quarters. Was the hype real, or did one game reveal the limits? This is not a takedown. It is a reality check. Numbers can glow without telling the whole truth. Highlights can loop without showing the work that creates them. What happened that night was more than a bad box score. A top defense showed its hand. A young star felt pressure from the first catch. The story that had been built on efficiency and ease met resistance. To understand what we saw, we need to rewind to how the hype took shape. It did not start with a box score. It started with a moment. A 44-point eruption that flipped a switch in the conversation. Clips flooded every feed. Angles from courtside. Pull-ups in rhythm. Tough finishes that looked effortless. The takeaway was simple. This was a star arriving on cue. Broadcast turned that night into a narrative. Graphics rolled out with early markers. Fastest to 200 points and 50 assists. Efficiency lines stacked beside other rookies. The phrase "ready on day one" showed up in segment after segment. Studio chatter framed it as proof. The league had another headliner. The team had a new engine. Comparisons poured in next. Not subtle ones. Side-by-side charts with the sport's biggest draw. Percentages circled. Shot charts highlighted. The message was that the numbers were already speaking for themselves. Context moved to the background. The story moved to the front. Fans bought in because the pictures matched the pitch. Clean makes, calm decisions. A pace that looked ahead of schedule. If you tuned in for a week, you could believe the arc was already set. The hype did not feel forced. It felt earned. Then came the night everyone quoted the next morning. Seattle did not play it straight. They loaded the floor before the first dribble. On every catch, she felt a body. On every screen, she saw two. The first read disappeared. Passing windows shrank to slivers. They shaded a helper at the nail, denied handoffs, and top-locked off the ball to keep her moving sideways instead of downhill. When the ball came back, the second defender arrived early, turning simple actions into crowded puzzles. The effect showed up in timing. Touches came farther from the arc. Drives started later in the clock. Kickouts were rushed. When she tried to reset, the defense bumped the route and reset the trap. The rhythm that carried the 44-point night was gone, not because of nerves, because Seattle kept forcing early give-ups and dared the rest of the lineup to make them pay. They also cleaned the glass. One shot and done. No free looks on long rebounds, physical lanes, quick tags, and 5 bodies collapsing ended extra possessions before they started. The scoreboard told a story about misses. The tape told a story about control. Seattle built a template that other teams can copy without elite personnel. Pressure early, help early, live with the skip and trust the rotation. But the box score did not tell the whole story. A clean percentage looks like clarity. It is not. Efficiency without usage is a snapshot. Usage without context is a trap. When the first red disappears and 2 defenders live at the point of attack, every number bends. Pull-ups turn into late clock bailouts. Touches drift farther from the arc. Assists evaporate when kickouts land on cold hands. The box score punishes the initiator while the defense smiles. That is why simple comparisons never hold. One player living off second actions and clean relocations will always look prettier than a primary who sees pressure on the catch. Shot quality changes, pace changes, decision windows shrink. You can stack field goal percentages side by side and circle the higher one. It still does not tell you who carried the gravity and who benefited from it. There is also the hidden math of fatigue. Early traps force longer routes just to touch the ball. Restarts eat the clock. Every possession becomes a sprint into a wall. The legs that powered the 44-point night do not vanish. They drain across a game of collisions and resets. Misses creep short. Reads come a beat late. The numbers flatten and the narrative flattens with them. Context fixes the picture. Role, attention, timing, who starts the action, and who finishes it. On that night, the context tilted hard against style points. The job was to absorb heat, move the ball, and hope the chain snapped somewhere else. It did not. The percentage looked ordinary because the workload was not, but impact is more than a column of makes and misses. It shows up in results and in the seats. And that is where the conversation got even louder. The scoreboard shaped the mood before anyone argued percentages. Losses stacked up. The standings slipped. Every recap felt like the same story with a new headline. When a team sits near the bottom, patience runs thin. The margin for a young star shrinks with it. Crowds became part of the conversation. The line echoed over and over. Can't even sell out. It was less a data point and more a chant. Clips of empty rows, shots of late arrivals, a chorus of frustration that turned one rough night into proof of a bigger problem. That is how narratives harden. Results feel heavy, seats look light, the emotion fills in the gaps. A bad quarter becomes a bad month. A quiet crowd becomes a verdict. It stops being a game story and starts feeling like a referendum on hype. Inside that noise, simple details get lost. What the defense did, where the ball stalled, how often the first option was erased. The post-game talk moved fast. The tape moved slower. The claims about attendance and momentum drowned out the context of what actually happened on the floor. The backlash was loud because it was easy to see. A lopsided score, a flat atmosphere. The conclusion wrote itself. The player at the center carried the blame because that is how star stories work. The same spotlight that builds the myth turns harsh when the team sinks. On the court, there was a whiteboard reason the night looked so rough. The blueprint did not require a hot take. It required a closer look. Seattle stacked the deck before the first screen. They pushed the catch higher. They shaded a body at the nail on every touch. They top-locked off the ball to cut off handoffs. The goal was simple. Keep her moving sideways and keep the paint crowded. On ball screens, the second defender arrived early. Sometimes it looked like a blitz. Sometimes it felt like a hard show that lingered. Either way, the first read disappeared. The pocket pass closed. The retreat dribble became a reset instead of an attack. By the time the ball swung, the clock was thin and the weak side was ready. Off the ball, they chased over and bumped every route. Pin downs turned into wrestling matches. Flare actions produced catches that were a step too far to shoot in rhythm. Any back cut met a body at the rim. The message was constant. No clean feet. No clean eyes. The glass was part of the plan. They tagged from the weak side and sent size to the elbows. Long rebounds that usually spark easy points turned into one shot and done. Without second chances, there was no chance to settle in. Possessions stayed short and choppy. All of this forced late clock decisions. Pull-ups off balance, bailout drives into help, kickouts to cold hands. It looked like a shooting slump. It played like a spacing and timing squeeze. The first option went missing. The second option came late. The third option never arrived. There were counters on the table. Slip the screen before the trap forms. Use ghost actions to drag the second defender out of the lane. Bring the screen higher, then flip it to change the angle. Start the action on the second side so the help has farther to travel. Hit the short roll and let a big make the next pass. None of that became a steady rhythm on that night. That is why the blueprint felt repeatable. It did not require perfect athletes. It required early help, loud communication, and 5 committed rebounds. Remove comfort at the catch. Crowd the first decision. Win the possession on the glass. The scheme did the rest. And while the whiteboard told a clear story, the loudest noise came from somewhere else. Comparisons sell faster than context. The easiest pitch was a simple one. The next, it fit into thumbnails. It fit into a headline. It did not fit the reality of 2 different players in 2 different roles. Once that label stuck, every clean shooting night felt like confirmation. Graphics circled the percentages. Clip-stitched makes into a highlight reel that looked like destiny. The story wrote itself before the next game even tipped. Then one marquee telecast turned rough. The same machine that built the rise flipped the script in a single evening. A blowout traveled farther than a quiet win. A crowded box score looked like proof that the label was a lie. The conversation jumped from praise to doubt without stopping at nuance. That is the trap. A comp becomes a cage. If you match the number, you are the heir. If you do not, you are overhyped. There is no room for role, scheme, or matchup. There is only a verdict delivered in real time. The transcript's core point is simple. There is no next Caitlyn. There is only this player in this context, learning how to beat pressure that was built for her. The more the camera turns that into a race, the less anyone talks about the counters that actually change games. Sound bites travel. Film sessions do not. The night in Seattle became a story about ceilings when it was really a study in attention and angles. The media loop prefers a cleaner arc. Rise, fall, redemption. Real growth is messier and slower. So the noise got loud. The labels hardened. And inside the locker room, the task did not change at all. Solve the blueprint, win the next possession, and let the story catch up later. But the noise still had consequences. Which brings us to what happened after the cameras cut. The tone shifted fast. Highlights disappeared from timelines and were replaced by slow-motion breakdowns of traps and turnovers. Panel shows clipped the worst stretches and treated them like a verdict. Posts repeated the same lines from the night of the loss. The myth died. The label never fit. Attendance as evidence. It sounded final because final is easier to sell. Inside the transcript, the reactions split into 2 camps. One camp pointed at the box score and the standings. They called the hype hollow and used the blowout as proof. The other camp pointed at the tape. They circled the early help at the nail. The top locks, the way the first catch started 5 feet farther out. They argued that the problem was structural and solvable if the team sharpened its second and third actions. Voices around the team stuck to simple truths. Physicality mattered. Rebounding cost possessions. Spacing collapsed when the first option went missing. The message was not dramatic. It was practical. Clean the glass. Loosen the first catch. Move the ball before the second defender arrives. The transcript read like a checklist more than a confession. The player at the center did not get a pause. Every touch in the next game would carry the residue of that night. The narrative demanded either instant redemption or continued doubt. There was no room for a quiet recalibration in public. The only place that allowed for it was the film room and the next practice. What lingered in the transcript was a question, not a punchline. Was the blowout a cap on what this version of the offense can do, or was it the exact lesson needed to unlock the counters that have to come next? The document did not pretend to know. It captured a pivot point. That is where the story settled for now. Between a viral judgment and a patient fix, between noise and work, between a comp that never fit and a role that is still being built. The next stretch would supply the answer if the team could turn a bad night into a better plan, which sets up the only way to close this out. One blowout did not crown a star or bury one. It revealed angles. It showed where the pressure lives and where the answers have to come from. The label can wait. The comp can wait. The film cannot. If the counters show up, the same cameras that rush to judgment will rush back. If they do not, the night in Seattle will look like a ceiling instead of a lesson. The truth sits in the next stretch, inside small choices that do not trend but decide games. So watch the first catch, watch the second defender, watch the glass. If those 3 moments bend, the story bends with them. The question was never hype or no hype. It was always this: can you take a blueprint that beat you and turn it into your blueprint for winning? The answer is coming, one possession at a time.